So for this video, we're going to take a look at developing the lion form. We're going to be doing this outside because we want to focus a lot more on developing the postures rather than our actual placement on the circle. The circle is very important when you start off, when you're learning the forms, because it puts you in the correct positions. But obviously most of the times that you train, you won't have an exact circle to work from, which is a good thing because it means that you can focus more on the feel and development of the postures rather than the exact foot placements, whether it be toe or heel on the circumference. Obviously, we just carry all that through from our basic training. With all of the circular forms, we start with a complete circle walk of Qigong. Then once we get back to the start position, this is where we start the actual form. So from our walking posture here, we bring the weight forwards as we move it into lion embracing the ball. So from this position here, you should feel the stretch all the way through the back leg. We're not going to lengthen the stance. We're just going to stretch and drive that back heel through, and that's going to be enough. So from here, we step around with the right leg, fold down with the left claw, turn on the heel, transfer the weight to the right as we claw with the right hand. Now shuffle along, the hand comes up through the center, and then we claw forwards as we move along the circumference. The first section has a couple of principles that we work with. So first of all, with lion embracing the ball, this is going to be a Qigong posture, which is going to help to bring the energy up to the upper third of the body. Whenever the hands come up above the head, you'll feel that the energy should naturally rise. The power from the claw strike as we step around comes entirely from dropping this elbow down to the rib cage as we drive forwards. We're not focusing so much on the extension of the arm. We want the elbow to drop in and the arm twists forwards. So if I do that towards the camera, the hand drives in, we drop the elbow and we strike forwards. This is very much a power development thing where we're using the quad as we close it in to strike forwards with this claw. On the second one, because we bring the left hand up through the center, this one's going to be more of an extension of the arm as we step forward and strike. So the two principles that we're working with here when it comes to doing the combat applications is the first one is going to be an outside excluding technique. So as the arm drops and drives forwards, we're dealing with the punching coming in from the outside and then crushing the arm inwards. The second one is going to be an inside excluding technique where the hand comes up through the center and we turn out. So we're going to occupy that center line before we strike forwards. So it doesn't have to be a claw when you're using it as a fighting application, but all the tools are exactly the same. So when the hand is high, you're going to crush in. Okay, so with section number 2, this is going to be lion bounces the ball. So from the end of section 1, we finish with the weight slightly to the back after we strike forwards and settle. The right arm is going to drop and swing through as the left hand chambers. And then we're going to turn on the heels, switching the weight to the left leg as we pull and strike forwards with this left claw. When we transition from the end of section 1, we have this nice big swing as the arm comes through. And this just allows the body mechanics to work a little bit more smoothly. When you start to develop these postures, you want the circles slightly smaller and more usable. We're going to turn the hand in and just hook back, so keeping the elbow a little bit higher. And then as the hands come through, this is where you apply the pressure. So a slight squeeze from the waist. We turn the body to the right as we pull the right arm back and just press the left claw forwards. This is going to load the body. So when you release that front foot, you're going to get that power into your elbow without having to pull your arm back and then swing your elbow in. So it becomes much more of a close range or a grappling type application. So from here we squeeze, we shuffle forwards, and then use the rebound to come up to the shoulder. And then as you turn on your heels, it's the body that's going to provide the power and a little less of the arms swinging out from the body. When you learn the form at basic level, it's very important that you do these movements nice and big because it helps you to develop the timing and also the coordination of your body when you're moving from posture to posture. But once you become so familiar with these postures, you're starting to compress them down a bit to try to add more power and more kind of realistic use case. As soon as we finish the elbow here, we're going to load to the shoulder, and then we're going to swing around. We're not going to go quite as low as we do in the basic form, but the hands just come around to the side. So from the end of section 2, we're going to pivot around, pick up the arm, pass it across, elbow twice, step around, and then strike again, moving all the way across the body. As we strike around here, again in the basic form, the hand drops all the way down, lifts up, and we pass across. But this can be done a lot smaller. So as you strike around here, we're looking at guarding up close to the head, and then the hand's going to circle up, past the arms across, and then we shuffle in for the elbow moving backwards. There's no real reason why we do 2 elbows rather than the 1. It's just a way of using the body mechanics to double up on good strikes. So if you're trapping in and you've hit once really well with an elbow, it kind of makes sense to just follow it up and see how many elbows you get. If we can strike multiple times at such a close range, it means that we can inflict more damage, and then gives us more options when we move on afterwards. So the transition into section 4 is going to give us all the things that we need in order to develop the actual Qigong that helps to raise the energy from lion embracing the ball. Both hands pass up in front of the stomach meridians that run up through the face, and that's going to help you to lift the energy all the way into your opposing position of lion embracing the ball. So as we step around, same thing happens. We're going to just time the step, loading the hands to the shoulder, and then we swipe around again to the outside of the circumference. This movement here is going to load the body so the waist turns to the right, and then we bring the elbow back, and then as we step forwards, our elbow's already loaded as we strike in. So the first one wants to be just above the shoulder level because we want to strike in towards the neck. We want to angle the elbows slightly upwards, which means that as we claw backwards on the next movement, we have this upwards angle that hooks in underneath the jaw. So as you strike around here, time the falling of the step, and then as soon as the waist reloads to the right, we keep the weight on the right leg and we use the momentum to hook back up. And that's going to turn the body all the way around, ready to go into another lion embracing the ball. And then we drop the hands down, turn on the heels, hands come up, and we perform the same thing on the second side. So the reason why we do 2 lion embracing the ball before we do our Qigong is to really emphasize the raising of that energy ready to go into the Qigong walk. When we do our Qigong walk, there's a few things we need to keep in mind. So as we step with the inside leg, the left leg on side number 1, this is going to be your in-breath. When you breathe in, you're going to stretch your left palm as well. So the palm that's closest to the center is going to be your main or your focused palm. The right hand that sits above the head is going to be your balancing hand. So every time you breathe in, you're going to stretch that left palm, and then we slip, take a step through, and then we stretch the right palm and just relax the left. So every single time, slip, step. On the in-breath, we bring the inside leg through, stretch that left palm, relax the right palm, and then just reverse the same thing as we step with the right, stretch the right palm, relax the left palm. So when we move into the intermediate level, we want to be jumping around and hitting those positions. And if you practice correctly, you should be pretty much on the circumference every single time. But if there's a slight discrepancy, if you're off by an inch or so, it's not going to make a massive amount of difference. Only when you start to develop the postures correctly will you start to get real benefit from them. So from the walk around the circle, we slip the left foot to the front, and now the first move, the hands go out and we skip all the way around and sit the weight back into our left leg. Now from here, we're going to shake 3 times, as we move backwards. The number of times that you shuffle isn't really that important. The idea is that you're just trying to link your body mechanics to some movement. So from the rear naked choke position, as we shake and move backwards, what we're trying to do really is trying to settle into that rear naked choke and also try to maintain our balance. Because obviously if you've ever tried to perform a rear naked choke on somebody that's fighting back, they're not just going to stand there and let you have it. So you need to be able to ground yourself, sinking the weight slightly more whilst you try to settle into that choke and make the application work. So from the end of the shake, we settle in, the hands drop, turn upwards, and then we turn the body back in towards the center for lion embracing the ball. So as we come up into lion embracing the ball, we're going to step around straight away and push down in front of the body. The hands, again, when we start to develop this, they don't have to come all the way down to the waist. We can just press down just so we have a downwards angle on the forearms, and then we go into our claw. So as soon as we press down, the hands come up and we shuffle forwards, doing that slap step. Both claws go towards the front. Now from this position, we're going to do 4 chops. We're going to go right, left, right, left. When we get to the 4 chops that come after the claw, we're learning something about anatomy that probably a lot of people don't know, and that is working in a scapular plane. We have the very peculiar way of cutting up from here and cutting down at the same time. If you're doing any upward strikes and you're moving outwards, you need to stay within a certain range so you don't get any impingement in the shoulders. From this position, if we're trying to cut upwards at this angle with the little finger high, then we need to keep the elbows slightly further forward, because that's going to give us full range of motion. So no matter how high we're striking, this is going to enable the shoulder to move. If I try to move straight up through the center, I feel a locking in my shoulder, which won't allow my hand to go too much higher, especially with force behind it. The same thing at the side. If I try to lift my arm straight up to the side, I get to about shoulder height, and then from here makes it very, very difficult for me to lift and even add power to that movement. So these 4 chops are actually a way of teaching you to strike upwards at a slight angle, which is going to give you full range of motion, and you can add power at any point. Most of these forms are here to teach us things about how to move the body rather than to be solely something about fighting. So there's lots of little tools and loads of information that you need to really pay attention to. Obviously, this has applications into where to strike on the opponent's body as well. So it's linked to the DIMAC, striking into stomach 9, up and down the side of the neck or the vagus nerve. So after the chops come down, we shuffle forwards. Again, we just drop the weight forward onto the front leg and we elbow. Now from here, both hands are going to come up through the center, again occupying that center line. And this is another time where we need to do a leap around rather than just a step, because it's going to add more force into the application once we land. So when we go 1, 2, 3, 4, we elbow here. And then you see that the movement is a lot more dynamic. So the jump around is going to actually load the power. So the difficulty with this application, especially when you start to leap around, you need to keep the weight onto the left leg. So as you land, you're ready to go straight forward and strike straight off that rebound. Again, the hands drop, we step through. This time we're back weighted because we're going to be turning to the outside of the circumference for section 7. So moving into section 7, or Lion Fights the Pride, the idea is that we have multiple attacks and defenses to be doing in a full 360 degree. So it's more about body mechanics and how you're going to move around in the space while still maintaining your balance and delivering the power correctly. From Lion Embracing the Ball, the first one is going to be a double swipe to the outside of the circumference. We then have a double movement. So the first one is a high block. The second one is a strike. We then circle the hands around and then claw across the body. So the first double swipe goes to the outside of the circumference. We then roll the forearm up to block. Now from here, without rechambering, we're going to swing the leg back to reinsert the power as we strike to the back. So the hands then load to the shoulder, and then we turn, which brings us all the way around to face the other direction. So as soon as we finished our double strike, we're going to bring the weight forwards. Because the left hand is already on the top, we're going to lift up nice and high. The first claw to the outside goes to the right, and then we strike with the left, and then strike with the right. Then as we roll the hands over, we strike with the left, strike with the right, strike with the left, and now the hands have returned to their original position where we just lift up, step around, and then strike down on both sides of the body. When the hands are in this position, we're actually giving ourselves the option to strike on the open and the close, which essentially gives us twice as many strikes per position. So when the hands are up, we can strike and cover at the same time, and we can also do it to the other side. So again, they don't have to be claws, they can be hammer fists, they can be back fists, they can be anything that you want. So as we move into the following section, we've got lion claws wildly. And this is a very peculiar movement. Again, it's just containing all the tools that you need in order to strike in various directions. So with the hands down by the sides, as we shuffle along the circumference, we have the hands performing these two opposing figure eights. Now the hands are moving offset, which means that multiple different things are happening at the same time. But again, you don't have to use claws, you don't have to use them together. It's just a coordinational drill to help you get your entire body moving in accordance and generating power through every single movement. The right hand is going to come up, circle round and claw down. The left hand is going to meet it halfway and perform the other side of the figure eight. Every single time we're striking up with the back of the knuckles here, and then gripping round and pulling down and dragging. Again, these are just striking angles. They're not traditionally meant for an application that's kept in this format. So again, as we move along the circumference, the hands are going to move offset, the feet move offset, and there's so many things happening at the same time that it's a really good developmental tool. You're using your body to really kind of inject force into every single movement. The waist is turning, and for a full body conditioning tool, it works really well. The striking patterns are also seen in things like the Filipino martial arts, when you have a stick or a knife and you're cutting up and striking down with either hand on this figure eight. Okay, so moving into the final section, in the basic format, the hands come out, we step around, step behind, and we sink into that back leg. Now, this is another one where we have to jump into the position, and this is going to help to develop the strength in the legs, as well as the kind of rebound power that we get with the full body. So as soon as we finish the last posture here, we're going to jump, and then we hit that position and we sink into that back leg. So as the hands pull in, we then explode out, and then we strike with this double finger jab along the circumference. So when we strike from this crouched position, we have these two double finger jabs that come in just underneath the rib height. The position of these strikes are more about teaching you about Dimak and how to strike the stomach meridian. This should be positioned to strike into stomach 19, 20, 21, and 22. So the position of the fingers, as you extend the hands forwards, just sit on the stomach meridian that just comes down through the torso. So again, it's not particularly a great shot for a self-defense application, but in terms of containing the knowledge that you need to understand the art as a whole, at a regular spacing of the hand, you'll find that each of the fingers drops onto one of the stomach meridian points. The index finger is going to be stomach 19, middle finger is going to be 20, ring finger 21, little finger 22. So not necessarily for you to strike with this double finger jab, but if you were to strike at that height with a punch, or even like a lower elbow or anything along those lines, you know that you're going to be striking into the correct position. So as we continue around the circumference, we just perform exactly the same footwork, but then adding two different types of shots to it. So the first one is going to be the finger jab. The second one is going to be a double downward strike. This can either be an open palm or a claw, And again, you're going to be striking to the stomach points that are just on the top of the chest. So we're going to be striking into 14 and 15 that sit just on the top of the chest, just as the top of the torso starts to curve over. And then the last two are going to be outward chops. But as we come forwards, we're going to strike upwards to strike into the neck, which is going to be the stomach 9 point that sits just right on the vagus nerve. And again, we're using the idea of this scapular plane. So out at a 45-degree angle will give you the maximum amount of range by being able to just strike the power all the way through without limitations of the shoulder. So as soon as we've struck up here, the hands are going to drop, we circle in, and then we start to walk the circle again, and then we go all the way around, ready to start on the second side. So hopefully this video has been useful in giving a bit more information on the movements of the lion form, especially some of the more peculiar ones and why we use them. Again, if you have any questions, please drop them in the comments below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.